evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bat Flip Podcast. Baseball is back. Today, we're going to talk about a few extensions that happened before baseball got started. We're going to touch on the Minor League CBA agreement getting signed. We're going to hit on a few injuries, and we'll give you some overreactions and exciting early performances from the first weekend of baseball. Before we jump into that, though, how you doing, Matt?
Doing pretty good. Had a very good weekend watching some baseball, and so excited that real baseball is back, and just hanging out, and got to spend some time outside yesterday. But glad I didn't watch the Braves game yesterday too much. But Thursday through Sunday, great start to the season. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of entertaining stuff, and very very good start. How's your week been? How's your weekend been, David?
It's been good. Got to watch a couple of Cubs games and touch on a few more, Major League games throughout. But, uh, you know, it's not always baseball, so I got to have a nice date on, I think it was Sunday night, and yeah, it was good. So, I might notice we're missing a host. Damien's power went out this afternoon, has not come back yet. We went ahead and started our recording, and hopefully, he'll be able to jump in here before the end of the episode. But um, other than that, stinks, power outages, no fun. We hope Damien's gets back, and we'll have him back next week. So with that, we'll jump into these extensions. Um, you know, a couple of them we might have touched on already. If we did, apologies. But I do want to start with the biggest extension that got signed, which was Manny Machado's 11 years, $350 million extension. From there, I'll go and just name off a couple of these, and then Matt, you can just give your take on a couple of them, and I'll toss around a couple thoughts before we move on, because these are all kind of before the season started, and I think opening day also a few of them hit. So uh, we'll just list them off here. Orlando Arcia went for 3 years, 7 million with the Braves. Nico Horner went 3 years, 35 million with the Cubs. We heard about that one last week. Corbin Carroll signed an 8-year, $111 million extension with the Diamondbacks. Jake Cronenworth went 7 years, 80 million with the Padres. Trevor Stephan went 4 years, 10 million with the Guardians with two club options. Andres Jimenez went 7 years, 106 million, and Emmanuel Clase went 5 years, 20 million. Both of those also with the Guardians. Guardians went on a extending spree there right as opening day hit. So Matt, what are your thoughts on some of these extensions?
Yeah, well, to start off with the Machado extension, definitely the Padres have been in, sign long-term big money contract mode for the last seems like 3 or 4 years, and this is the second time they've signed Machado to a long-term big contract, and he was about to have his opt-out at the end of this year, and so they needed to extend him, or he was probably going to become a free agent again. And they thought they'd go ahead and lock him up. And Machado's coming off a fantastic season last year. He put up 7 wins above replacement, had a 152 WRC plus. And while those numbers at the plate probably won't be repeated this year, he did have some peripheral stats that were a little bit high, but he's still going to be a fantastic all-star potential MVP caliber player. The defense is still really good at third. He's still going to hit really well at the plate. He's a great player, and I think the Padres are excited to bring him back long term. This is a contract that I think is at the end of it. I mean, they're going to be paying him to age 41, so it's going to age pretty poorly. I mean, once he gets to 37, 38, 39 years old, I think they're going to have some albatrosses on their hands. But I mean, they're in a World Series window, and they're going to have a lot of their World Series core, depending on what happens with Soto, locked up for the next 3 or 4 years, and probably still really good for the next 3 or 4 years. So they're going to have a fairly extended World Series window here, and so I think the Padres definitely are happy to make that move. A few of the other ones, I mean, I thought the Arcia was kind of funny just because the Braves are notorious for really cheap extensions for guys, and 3 years, $7 million for a guy who was the starting shortstop for the team is kind of funny. Nico Horner, I thought was a pretty good move to buy out a year of free agency. He had the breakout year last year, was really good. Corbin Carroll, we've seen this a few times, and some of these contracts before a guy really starts playing at the big league level much. I mean, I know he played a few games last year, but some of these deals have worked out, some of them haven't. I mean, you had I think maybe Tyler White might have been one that was signed that was just it didn't work at all, and there's been a few of those extensions that didn't work very well, but I think that Corbin Carroll is a very good prospect and has showed some World Series. I mean, showed some major league talent so far, and it kind of showed it at the major league level enough to give him that deal. So get a couple years of free agency out of him. Cronenworth, I thought was interesting. He had a little bit of a down year last year, but 7 years, 80 million. That's honestly a really good deal. It buys out 4 years of free agency, which is nice. Trevor Stephan, we've seen how much relievers have cost lately. So, that cheap deal for a guy who came off a really good relief season last year and is young is pretty nice. Jimenez, really good as well. I thought that was a good signing. He put up like 6.5 wins above replacement last year. Great defensively. And I think there's even still room to grow at the plate after having a really good year there last year. And Emmanuel Clase is one of the best closers in the game. His stuff is insane. And I feel like he's going to be one of those types of closers that isn't quite as volatile as other guys because the stuff is so good. 5 years, $20 million for him is a really good deal. And one other little note here: I love the Guardians locking these guys up. I think it shows a lot of foresight for them as a team that's probably not going to spend a ton of money in free agency every year, but is that it showed that they're will want to lock up that core long term. We saw it with Jose Ramirez last year getting the extension there. I think that they're going to continue to try to extend guys and keep that core around for a few years of free agency that they would typically have had guys walk probably. So I thought that was really cool. But definitely some interesting stuff here with these with these extensions, and it's good to see teams getting some things done here right as the season begins.
Yeah, one name that the Guardians did not extend was Stephen Kwan, that was mentioned in a number of tweets about this because the rumblings of a few extensions kind of surfaced up with a few of the writers, and Kwan's name was thrown around, but they did not go ahead and get that one done. Another non-extension that happened here was Brian Reynolds. Reportedly, the Pirates and Brian Reynolds got to an agreement on the money, but then opt-outs came up, and the Pirates balked at that, which, if I'm Brian Reynolds, I completely understand wanting to add an opt out. If the Pirates aren't better in 3 years, you probably don't want to be there anyway. So yeah, I understand where the Pirates are balking at from with that, but also, that situation continues to be ambiguous. And then a review of these extensions on my end. Love the Nico Horner deal. Shows a lot of faith in Nico and pairs him and Dansby Swanson up for at least the first half of that contract, so that middle infield is shored up with good defense. And all the Cubs pitchers have already been raving about how much they like having those two back there, and we've seen it in some of the performances so far. So, big fan of that. I love the Corbin Carroll move, right? I think I mentioned it when we talked about the Diamondbacks last week, but having that locked up for Corbin Carroll means the pressure's off, right? He can go out there, swipe bags, run hard, play 100%, and that's absolutely huge for the Diamondbacks' chances going forward, I believe. And Jake Cronenworth's underappreciated in that Padres core. I think he's a big part of what they're able to do because they have a guy who's like Cronenworth, who's going to get paid a little bit less. I mean, 80 million is nothing to sneeze at, but given the context of the players around him and the role Cronenworth plays in that team, he's very much the versatile Ben Zobrist style glue that holds that roster together and allows those guys to take breaks because he can play every position on the diamond and he can play it well. Cronenworth's not making as much money as them, and it's very much a utility role, both in the roster construction of a team that's already spending so much money. Having a guy like Jake Cronenworth on a deal like that is just awesome for them. So the Padres continue to extend and sign players, and I really like what they're doing. And yeah, the Guardians, I love what they're doing too. I think the extending of a bunch of guys is good for them, and that's what we like to see. I think that teams are spending on the players that are already in the system. So let's talk about the minor league baseball CBA, because this offseason, the minor league baseball players were finally added to the union, and they ratified the union for minor league baseball players, and in so doing, they have now gotten their first CBA, and it included a very substantial raise to the point of over doubling the base salary, like the minimum salary that you can get at every level of the minor leagues, which I think is really significant. Also, they're going to pay players year round. They're ensuring transportation to the fields being organized by the teams at the low and high A levels, which I think is really important. Um, and minor league players who sign with an organization at 19 or older are under team control for 6 years guaranteed instead of 7, which is good for the older players, right, the college players. So just a few of those things. There's a few more points in the CBA, but like the main takeaways are this huge raise, which still isn't quite like what you'd want to see, but I think it's a really big step in the right direction. And then obviously paying them in the offseason and ensuring transportation at the low levels.
Yeah, I think one thing to look at here is just when players get into the minor league systems, especially guys, this isn't going to affect players that are high dollar first round pick type guys quite as much because, like, you get that, multi-million dollar signing bonus, and the salary difference doesn't really make that big of a difference, but this is going to help with some of those players that are maybe senior signs out of college that are getting paid a very low signing bonus coming out, some later round draft picks. It's going to help those types of guys. I mean, there's all these stories out there about barely being able to live on what they've got, having to get other jobs in the off season and stuff to try to make up for the lack of pay they get during the season. Because at the end of the day, this playing baseball is a full time job for these guys, and all the training and stuff that goes into it in the off season is a full time job. And if you're not making enough money, I mean, they're not really making enough money to support themselves. So the option is either take that money or not play. And I think that a lot of times you see guys, well, we're just not going to play because we can't afford it. And then guys who do play are really struggling. So I think this is great for player development. I think it's going to help guys. They're not going to be quite as worried about things, and they're going to be able to afford a little bit more, when it comes to just comfort and everything with these minor league teams. So I think it's great for the players. I think it's going to be good for the long run for the owners and for baseball in general too, just because like I say, it's really difficult for a team to attract talent. And you never know when one of these senior signs who says, well, you know what, I think I'm just not going to play because that's just the amount of money I'd be making. It's just not worth it. Like, for them for those types of players, like, you never know when one of those might hit it big. So just the fact that those guys may be a little more incentivized to play minor league baseball could be great. And I think it just everyone being happier and the development being better at the minor league level is going to be nice. So definitely glad to see this. It's been a long time coming. I'm surprised it hadn't happened before now, but it's definitely good to see.
Yeah, it is, and it's really an investment in the future of baseball, right? Just being able to support them, these players being able to support themselves, and the organizations that they're in being able to provide them with support earlier in their career is a big step in my mind to cultivating a more, a top to bottom better roster, right? Where the bottom of your league is more talented and therefore the top of your league is more talented. And it's a good thing for baseball. So um, I'm excited about that. I think it's a really good change. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. But it is significant because, I mean, this is a big step. We talk about the CBA, all the time. That I think it was last offseason where it dominated our talks, right? It dominated the podcast, it dominated everything. Now it's so nice to be able to step back and focus on like the minor leagues making steps in the right direction as opposed to battling over millions of dollars of salary and stuff like that. So let's go into the start of baseball season. Before baseball season does start, opening day, a few injuries were announced, and then a couple of these were also after games have been played a little bit. But four pretty significant injuries have taken place and will be affecting, some specific teams. Justin Verlander has a low-grade Theres muscle strain, which is in your shoulder, and he'll be out he's on the IL now. Lars Nootbaar just got put on the IL after an opening day thumb injury. Max Fried is on the IL after an opening day hamstring injury, and Tristan McKenzie is out with another Theres strain, but this one more significant, and McKenzie should be out 6 weeks plus, per the Cleveland media. So, maybe I would say Verlander's injury, maybe not so unexpected after our
Yeah.
talks of the NL East, but what about the rest of these injuries, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Verlander, yeah, it's when all your money's tied up in two two 40-year-old pitchers, that's gonna, that's the kind of thing you worry about. And it's definitely not a great start to the season for them. But he did sound like he was probably, it's kind of precautionary that he was gonna miss the start or two. So it'll be interesting to see when he comes back and if he's 100% when he does come back. Lars Nootbaar, that it's disappointing. He had such a good World Baseball Classic, and he had a lot of momentum going for himself. And getting injured on opening day is never good. But I don't think he's going to be out too long. So the Cardinals have all the utility pieces and depth to be able to make up for it while he's gone. So as long as he comes back, in that 15, not too distant time frame, I think he'll be fine. Max Fried, he tweaked his hamstring just a little bit on opening day. It didn't look all that bad, but it's definitely not great. The Braves starting pitching has a few little nagging injuries and some question marks right now, and him being out long term would be really, really bad. But it does look like he's only going to miss one or two starts, so that shouldn't be too big of a problem. And then Tristan McKenzie being out is a pretty big deal for Cleveland, because I really think that they really need him to repeat what he did last year, because I really don't think Cal Quantrill is going to repeat his season from last year. And they're kind of like, I don't know how much, even though Savali had a really good first start, I don't know how much you can trust Savali and Plesac going forward, on a week or a start to start basis. So they really need that really good number two, and I think they can make it without him for 6 weeks. But if he's if he gets injured again, or if he stays out or lingers or something, that could be a big problem for them. But hopefully these guys all come back pretty soon. It's definitely significant injuries here, and you hate to see it on opening day, but at the same time, when it happens on opening day, these guys have plenty of time to recover and not miss too much time. So, I guess it's better to happen on opening day than the day before the playoffs start. But definitely hate seeing these so early in the season.
Yeah, and we're, among other injuries, right? We've talked about the Seiya Suzuki injury, and he's already,
Yeah.
doing baseball activities. So, you're looking at a number of three of these injuries at least are probably not even going to require, they'll be the minimum stint, hopefully, and you'll see some of these more, star level players getting back to it. So, after this first weekend, we have seen a number of things, including debuts for some of the rookies that we talked about and some of the international signings. So, I figured we should go over just like, maybe cover what happened with those guys. Anthony Volpe starting at shortstop for the New York Yankees. He is stole a base on opening day, got his first hit on Saturday. Looks pretty good, but I think he looks a little bit young. I don't know that he's going to have the kind of superstar breakout season yet, at least from having seen a couple of things that he's done so far. What do you think about Volpe so far?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the expectation for Volpe this season. Last year in the minors, he did still look like he needed a little bit of seasoning, and he had a great spring training. And I get why they put him on the opening day roster and have him starting, but there's definitely some things he's going to have to, get better at and work on. But at the same time, he's had a really good, he had a really good weekend with some things. He had 3 stolen bases. I think he had a stolen base in each of his first 3 games, and I think I read somewhere where that might have been like he joined like one of 5 people to ever do that or something. So that was really cool. But yeah, I think he's going to be fine for them. We'll see. We'll see how long it takes him to kind of catch on. It'll probably be a little bit slow to start, but by midseason, I think last year you saw he struggled early, and then kind of midseason he caught on to AAA. So that might happen at the big league level this year. So we'll see.
Hmm.
Definitely seems like he's worthy of being in the big leagues though right now, which is good for the Yankees.
Comparatively, Jordan Walker, 3 games in, he has another hit tonight, has a
Yep.
couple of hits already, got one on opening day. Looks the part, I would say, though none of those hits really seem to be extra base hits, but he really hasn't, fallen off right now. 151 WRC plus through the first 4 game or yeah, 4 games this season.
Yeah, Jordan Walker's a guy that I think he's another guy I feel like maybe could have used a tiny bit more seasoning in the minors, but he's looked good so far. He had an RBI single tonight. He's hit a couple balls really, really hard that got caught for outs too. You got to remember this is such a small sample size. Like, I mean, he had a ball hit 108 miles an hour tonight that got caught on a diving catch by the shortstop. So it's I think he's going to be fine. It's just going to take him, the sample size will stabilize. I think, you know, we'll see how it goes going forward. The one thing I think he's been a little bit impatient at the plate. He hasn't struck out, but he also hasn't walked yet, and I think he's been a little bit jumpy. So he'll settle down. I think he'll have a pretty good rookie season.
Yeah, so do I. And speaking of rookie seasons, Kodai Senga went out, put up a 8 strikeouts in 5 and a third innings, and the ghost fork, which was appeared on his glove as well in a little graphic, was absolutely dominant and filthy. Featured on Pitching Ninja. I thought Kodai Senga looked really good, and I kind of feel that at this point, I'm a little upset that the Cubs didn't go out and sign Kodai Senga instead of Drew Smiley, especially after Smiley's performance today. I mean, Senga looks absolutely the part, at least through spring training in the first game so far.
Yeah, Kodai Senga looked good. I think sometimes his control is going to get him in trouble a little bit. He did have 4 walks in that game. It took him a little while to settle down, but and of course it was also the Marlins. But 8 strikeouts, you can see how good the stuff is. That ghost fork looked really good. It's really that ghost fork is a splitter, but he throws it just a little bit different from a typical splitter. And it's got really good action on it. It dives really well. He also throws really hard with his fastball, so it's a good combination to have. And I think he's the Mets have had some luck with guys that have good splitters recently. And that's kind of where Taiwan Walker had his career season last year with them, and kind of from developing a splitter. And I think that Marcus Stroman really kind of took off there when he kind of started working on a splitter a little bit. So that is something the Mets have had some good luck with, and I think Senga looks to be at least the solid number 3 in the rotation. I think he's looked pretty good. So definitely a successful debut for him, and we'll see how he continues to grow going forward at the big league level.
Another guy who has shown up and really had a strong start is Masataka Yoshida. Another guy who came over from Japan last season, and Yoshida homered today, which is Monday, and opening day, 2 hits and an RBI. Thus far, a 150 WRC plus, kind of like Jordan Walker. And Yoshida, in the World Baseball Classic, he was really strong, and I think he raised my expectations a little bit in the World Baseball Classic. He looks the part so far as well because Boston's offense has been really good, but they've had to be really good. The pitching there
Yeah.
really bad. So, what about Masataka Yoshida?
Yeah, so this is a guy that, from kind of listening to people's opinions on him coming over from Japan when he was signed, there were some teams that thought, oh my God, I can't believe you gave that guy that much money. And then there were some teams who really liked him and thought he was worth it. So the Red Sox obviously really liked it. They've had luck with guys from Japan coming over to play there. And Yoshida, the question with him coming in was, is he going to hit for power? I mean, that's been the question all along. People thought that he was going to be a pretty good plate discipline guy. He was not going to strike out a ton. He was going to get on base pretty well, but how much power is he going to hit for? Well, he hit an opposite field home run tonight at Fenway, and he, he's hit the ball really hard in his first few games. He did in the World Baseball Classic as well. So far, Yoshida looks like he might be worth that money. But it's a long season. We'll see what happens going forward. But it's definitely encouraging signs for him to have such a good debut and start to his season.
Yeah, and from the rookies and just their kind of original performances there, let's talk about some of the insane early performances that we've seen in the first couple of days, right? We've seen some guys have some absolutely crazy games early on, highlighted, I think, opening day by Adley Rutschman, who went 5 for 6 with a walk, which was an otherworldly early performance. We also saw CJ Cron hit 2 home runs as Colorado beat San Diego on opening day. And then the day after, Trace Thompson goes for 3 homers and 8 RBIs as the Dodgers win over the Diamondbacks, which 8 RBIs this early in the season, that's an incredible game.
Yeah.
Uh, the other 2 homer game that I saw, Brian Reynolds has done that today, along with another hit for Reynolds. So he's had a strong performance as well. Those early contract talks haven't really slowed him down at all. Uh, Early performances, can any of these guys keep it up? I think Adley might.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he won't keep up 5 for 5 with a walk and a home run, but he's going to do really well. I mean, I don't think Trace Thompson's going to keep hitting home runs like this. I mean, to be fair, also I think it was against Bumgarner, so if he didn't hit
Mm-hmm.
3 home runs, it was time to go home. But yeah, I mean, I could see CJ Crone having a big season at the plate. I mean, he plays in Colorado. He's good power hitter. I mean, I could see. I mean, he's not going to hit 2 home runs a game or something, but he could be a good solid. Have a solid season. And then Brian Reynolds. It'll be interesting to see what Brian Reynolds we get this year because I think he had that really, really good year in 2021. And then last year he was good, but he might be wanting like future superstar level type performance like he'd had in
Hmm.
2021. So it'll be interesting to see if we get something in between, if we get 2021 Reynolds, if we get 2022 Reynolds. And the power, I think, is a big part of that. And I think that, he showed off that power today. And I think he's had a pretty good start to the season. So that's nice to see. But definitely some interesting performances there. I thought they were all they were fun, and there was tons of good performances around baseball we could have picked from too. It's been
Yep.
a really exciting start, especially I mean a few teams like I mean like the Red Sox and the Orioles are going to play a lot of 11 to 10 games this year.
Yeah, they are. The games have really been strong, and we will touch on the rules, I think, and how they're approaching the
Yeah,
games here maybe at the end of it, with our closing thoughts. But I do want to point out that last year, CJ Crone's March and April 149 WRC plus, his May 138 WRC plus. First half was a 134 total. 51 second half WRC
yeah.
plus for CJ Crone. He's very much a hot starter that ends up cooling off, I think. So um, it's not unforeseen that Crone is a good start, but maybe he does put it together over a full season for once. I would like to see a monster year in Coors for CJ Crone. Definitely possible, though. He'll have to keep it up. Let's go from offense. We started on offense. Let's go to the really good pitching performances that we saw from mostly the starters. Relievers, you gotta have some quantity for the relievers. So we'll just stick with the starters for now because we had a bunch of shutouts actually thrown over this first weekend. Garrett Cole had a shutout performance on opening day. Probably the best pitching performance on opening day was Garrett Cole. I think 11 strikeouts, just masterful against. Oh gosh, who did the Yankees
The
play on opening day? It was
Giants.
the Giants. That's it. Yeah, Marcus Stroman had a really good opening day performance against the Brewers. Strong offense, and he went ahead and shut them out. Uh, 8 strikeouts for him in 6 innings. Drew Rasmussen today, 7 strikeouts for the Rays, shutout. Jeffrey Springs was really, really good. Oh man, who are they pitching? They're playing against yesterday because
It
they've
was
changed.
the
Was the Astros?
Tigers.
Oh, it was the Tigers.
Yeah,
Nevertheless, Jeffrey Springs 6 innings pitched, I think 12 strikeouts. So just a really, really strong performance for him. It might not have been 12
it
actually.
it was 12.
Yeah, it was. It was 12. Yep, there you go. I knew it. Um, And then Shane McClanahan as well. The Rays really have started off very strong in pitching. Kevin Gausman threw 6 shutout innings. Justin Steele threw 6 shutout innings. Luis Castillo for the Mariners threw 6 shutout innings. And maybe the biggest surprise of anyone that we've talked about so far, Johnny Brito for the Yankees. He threw 6 shutout innings as well. So strong starts for those pitchers. Anything we can take away from those guys? A lot of names that we expect, but a few that we would not.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes with like the Rays guys, I think all the Rays guys had good starts, but they were playing the Tigers. So if you don't have a good pitching start against the Tigers, it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Dylan Cease looking really good was nice against the Astros, which is a very good lineup. He looked, I mean, we knew he was going to be good coming in this year. I think, maybe the couple of the Cubs Brewers performances. I mean, Woodruff, I think looked really good too in that
Yeah, he did.
series and for the Brewers. But I mean, it was like cold and the wind was blowing real hard. It's, sometimes it's tough to pitch there. But it's sometimes
Yeah,
it's also if you can get a grip on the ball, you're not going to hit very well in that weather if you can get a grip on the ball. So I think like Corbin Burns really struggled with his grip. I think on opening
yeah,
day, and
he did.
I think he's done that before, if I remember right. Like he's
Hmm.
gone up to Wrigley early in the field and early in the season and struggled. But um, yeah, I mean, I think kind of the guys to look at. Maybe Gossman looking really good was nice. The Blue Jays really need somebody to step up on the mound because, I mean, it's been it's been a mess for the Blue Jays so far on the mound. I mean, tonight even like I think Barrios has given up 7 runs to the Royals tonight. I mean,
Yeah,
they look bad on the mound so far. Manoa looked really bad in his first start. Um, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, definitely some good outings. A couple guys like Luis Castillo coming off that big extension that he signed last year, coming into his his second year there in Seattle. They really needed a good start from him and against a pretty good team in the Guardians, and he did really well. That was a big one. And obviously Brito for the Yankees. If Carlos Rodon's going to be out for a while, they're going to need somebody to step up, and Brito's a candidate of guys that could step up. Him, Clark Schmidt, there's a couple guys that they're going to need, and
Hmm.
I think Severino's on the IL as well. So those guys stepping up is really nice for them. So definitely some good starts for these guys, and we'll see if they're able to keep it up.
For what it's worth, the only two that we mentioned in this group that did not walk any hitters were Dylan Cease and Luis Castillo.
Yep.
So yeah, just if
I
you were
don't
trying to
did
grade
Rasmussen
them,
did Rasmussen walk somebody?
yeah, no, he didn't either. But so three guys. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. I saw Rasmussen's after six shutout. He may have gotten pulled. I thought he got pulled. So I went ahead and wrote it down. But really impressed with Justin Steele too. He's come out of the gate strong and kind of picked up where he left off last year after
Yep.
an injury and a bit of a shaky spring and even a bit of a shaky first batter where he walked the first guy on four pitches in the game and then proceeded to just shut the Brewers down for those six innings. Gave the Cubs a chance to win. They didn't take it. Um, so those are some of our good pitching performances. The one I do want to specify is that Hunter Green and it showed on the broadcast, and I'm pretty sure it showed on Statcast. I don't know if it was verified through 105.2 to Andrew McCutchen, who, if you remember,
It's the Chapman.
the fastest pitch that has been seen and recorded by Statcast was Andrew or Aroldis Chapman to Andrew McCutchen, 105.6 or
Reds to the
yeah, or
Pirates too.
105.4, and it was Reds Pirates. Hunter Green, 105 to McCutchen, history repeating itself. I thought that was pretty noteworthy from this weekend that Hunter Green's already up in the high 100s. And even if that's not exactly 105, he was averaging 100 miles an hour on his fastball.
Yep.
Hunter Green might be in for a good season if he can get that thing to get some swings and misses.
Yeah, that's going to be the real question for him. Is he's thrown? He's always thrown hard, but man, it's been hittable. So we'll see.
Yep.
I mean, 105 is not hittable, but if he's at 99, major league players are seeing that so much now. Like if it's not moving, if it has bad spin rates and whatever, like if the shape's not great, the guys will hit it. But 105, man, that especially for a starting pitcher. I mean, we've seen guys maybe not throw 105, but we've seen guys get up close to that. Like you've seen Jordan Hicks, um, you've seen Chapman. Like you've seen some of these guys get up there, but Ben Joyce, a college guy last year, who's could be
Hmm.
a pretty big deal for the Angels later this year, by the way. You've seen some of that, but like from a starter hitting 105, I don't think I've seen that before. So
Yeah, it's impressive. He's got a lot. He's just really athletic, and I think that's what really helps him. Any worrisome performances while we're here on the pitchers? We saw Chris Bassett give up a ton of runs the other night. We've seen DeGrom give up a ton of
yeah,
runs. Chris Sale got whacked around.
yeah,
Obviously, Bumgarner, Manoah got whacked around.
yeah,
Who was it? Gave up four? Oh, Michael Kopech gave up four home runs today
yeah.
in the same inning, by the way.
Yeah, he gave up 5 on the game, I think, and
Yeah.
4 in the same inning.
So.
I mean, I think that it was worrisome to see all the Blue Jays guys. I mean, there's question marks about all of them. I mean, Manoa, I think there's been some question marks in the offseason about his conditioning and how the pitch clock having to, because he was a pretty slow worker last year, how the pitch clock would affect him, kind of having to get up there and throw. And he really looked bad in that first outing. You saw in Bassett, I think there's question marks about his conditioning. I mean, not his conditioning, but his ability with the pitch clock as well, adjusting to that. His velocity was down, which is worrisome. And then, I mean, Jose Barrios today got smoked. So that was not. That's obviously that bode well for them. I think I think that's a big deal with all the guys from the from the Blue Jays. I thought Jack Flaherty was really worrisome yesterday. I actually don't think he gave up a hit in his 5 innings or something, but he walked. I was looking at the box score. Yeah, he walked. Maybe it might have been Saturday actually. I'm gonna look real quick.
Seven.
He walked 7 guys
Yep.
in
He
like
didn't give up a
4
hit and
innings or
walked seven
something. Yeah,
guys.
5 innings. He walked 7, and
Yeah.
he really, really struggled to get. Um, and he also hit a guy too. He really, really struggled to get to get swings and misses, and his slider didn't look as good as it used to. Its velocity's down on it, so that's really worrisome for the Cardinals, a team that's already kind of struggling for starting pitching. I mean, they had John Woodford starting tonight, give up 6 runs. I mean, opening day they gave up 10 runs as a team. Like, that's a team that really needs somebody to step up on the mound. I think Adam Wainwright also went down with a
He
groin
did
injury. So we didn't mention that in our injury segment, and
for good
we probably
reason,
should have.
but
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, big name,
it's
but
biased.
yeah, big name, but yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, those were some really worrisome starts. I think.
Oh, one more. Aaron Nola. He was
Yeah,
horrible against the
yeah,
Rangers.
and I'm not too worried about DeGrom. Like, his stuff
Yeah.
looked good. He was facing a good lineup, and the same could be said for Aaron Nola. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he'll probably be fine. I'm not really worried about him yet. Like, if he
One
does this
start.
3 more times in a row, then I'd be worried about it. But I mean, it's one start. Guys have bad starts. I mean, we've seen it. It happens. Like, the Phillies pitching in general has been a train wreck
Yeah.
so far. I mean, Taijuan Walker. Oh, Taijuan Walker's another guy you could be worried about too.
Got
He looked
got
awful.
blown up.
He looked
Yeah.
awful today, and maybe also the Mets pitching, just because like Verlander's already hurt. Like, and
Yeah.
I
Scherzer
mean,
was
that's
good, but
worrisome.
yeah.
Carrasco looked awful today. I mean, I was watching that game. He couldn't find the strike zone. So, um, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Definitely, it's hard to be real worried about after one
Yeah.
start in spring training. But I mean, there's some guys that you don't like to see, like when you've
Hmm.
had when they had a trend last year, and that trend
Yes.
continues into spring training and into the first start of 2023. It worries you, even if maybe typically it shouldn't worry you, that a guy struggles in their first start. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was gonna get at real quick before we move kind of into what you were just talking about. I'm looking at a guy like Corbin Burns, right? I take into consideration the atmosphere he played in, right? Opening day, Wrigley Field, monster crowd, cold weather. It was like 40 degrees. That alone, I'm just throwing that start out the window, right?
yeah,
Like, and then I'm looking at like Jacob deGrom, right? First start, he struck out like half the batters he faced.
yeah,
That's He's fine, right? He'll get that. He got some bad luck, some hits fell in. It's all right. We move on. Like even Aaron Nola, right? I'm fine. Nola was bad, but the Rangers are. They've got something going over there. We'll get into that as well. What I was worried about the most here is a guy like Trevor Rogers, who was
yeah,
not good last year, and I wanted to see him get off to a good start, and he didn't. And it was a guy like, some of these guys like that were bad, that were going to be bad because of the pitch clock, right? Luis Garcia was really bad for the Astros. He has had to change his windup, right? He had the rocking baby windup. It took him forever to throw a pitch. He has to throw pitches faster this year.
yeah,
He's not. He's not off to a good start. Is it going to take him a long time to get going? I don't know. That's the type of thing I'm looking at. And then Chris Sale being horrible. I mean, I am he. It's been a while since Chris Sale was good, and he got rocked. So
yeah,
I'm just looking out for some of these guys, some of these trends. Jack Flaherty's another one, right? That's worrisome going into a contract year. You were hoping that if you want him to get paid, if he wants to get paid, he needs to perform well. Well, having no command in your first start of the year, that's not going to help things, and we'll see. So, drawing conclusions from one start, not a good idea, but that's what we've got to work with right now, and trying to take from other places. But we had some early overreactions for you because obviously it's been one game for
yep,
4 to 5 games for most teams, right? They haven't even gone through the order one time in terms of pitching rotation. Lots of baseball still to be played. After 4 games, is your best team so far?
Um, I mean, so far, I really like what I've seen out of the Rangers. I mean, they came out and played a good Phillies team and dominated them for 3 games. And I mean, the Phillies really struggled too, but the Rangers looked really good. The Yankees have looked good, even though they did drop a game. The Braves looked really good in their first few games, just because I know they lost on Sunday with the pitcher making his debut, but they look like they're going to contend for like homer races this year. I mean, they might get close to a record on that. I thought the Yankees looked good. Um, I definitely, I definitely think that the Brewers I thought were pretty impressive. Outside of their opening day struggle, they've looked good. Scoring 10 runs today, that's going to be a thing that the
Yeah.
Brewers, their issues so far. The Reds are 3-1. Can we talk about that?
No.
I know. Well, I mean, look,
The
and we'll
Cubs
talk
just
about.
lost while we
I
were
was gonna
what we were
say
doing
we'll
right now.
talk about how
Yeah.
they started 2-1. We don't have to
Right.
talk about today's game, but I mean I know it was the
Oh man.
Pirates, but still,
I
the Twins looked really good. So
yes.
it's been fun. So,
You didn't even steal my team. I was going to go with the Rays, right?
yeah,
My favorite team thus far, the Rays. I mean, three
yeah,
shutout level performances from the starters. Offense has been strong. Wander Franco's off to a good start.
yes, that's been nice to see.
So I'm just the Randy Rosarena. Maybe, like I said, maybe they can finally tell Randy to play every game like it's the most important game of his life, right? Randy would win every MVP if he could do that. But the Rays look good, and I remember. I mean, I didn't pick them. I didn't pick them in our
Yep,
predictions. I feel early on they are making me feel dumb because that pitching staff is really good. Definitely underestimated Jeffrey Springs. He was good last year, and that extension got him paid. He's playing with house money now. He's real good.
yeah. It's one of those things too. You do have to remember, like the Braves are playing the Nationals. They look good,
Right.
but they were playing the Nationals. The Rays have played the
Tigers.
Tigers, and today played the Nationals. Like,
Hmm.
the I mean, it's. I think the Twins played the Marlins today. I don't remember who they played over the weekend, but oh, the Royals. They've played the Marlins and the Royals. So some of these teams are starting off like that's why I was so impressed with the Rangers because they just played the Phillies, like it dominated the Phillies, like so that I thought
Hmm.
that was fun to see, but yeah, it's a good start for some teams, and for some teams it's more important for some teams than others to get off that good start too. Like a team like the Rangers, who just spent a lot of money in free agency, they got a lot of new pieces. It's important for them to get the good vibes starting it off early to like get some momentum. I remember, and just showing my Braves fandom obviously, but I remember when the Braves kind of got out of their rebuild, their first year where they won the division, they won 5 in a row. Their first one, they won on opening day on a walk-off home run against the Phillies,
Hmm.
and that really just kind of kick-started their season. Like, I'm not real worried about a team that is already really good not having a great opening weekend,
Hmm.
but a team like the Angels had a good weekend too. I know they lost on opening day, but they came back and they dominated their next two games. Like those types of teams that are kind of on the fringe, they could go either way. You're not really sure about them, but you want to like them. You think they got talent. Like starting off really good can really help those types of teams. So it's good to see the Rangers have a
Hmm.
great start. Of course, injury issues are going to be their thing for the season, but um, if they can stay healthy. But I think that was really important.
Yeah, I think so. So maybe when we mentioned it a number of times, Phillies 0-3, right? Through the first weekend, and did they lose today
They get
too?
smoked by the Yankees today.
Yeah, they lost today too. The Phillies are 0-4. That is not a good start. Again, my philosophy with baseball is every team, just about every team, right, barring the top and bottom exceptions, every team wins 60 and lose 60. It's what you do with the other 40 games, the other 42 games. That's what matters the most. And that's what differentiates the winners from the losers, right? Is having a really good record in those other games. Until you get to 120, you can't really tell one way or the other, but through the first weekend and Monday, really, and not we're not even done with Monday yet necessarily, but I'm worried about the Phillies. Cubs are off to a bad start, and that's not good, right? For a team that needs everything to break right in
Yeah,
order to make the playoffs, that's not a good start. Cardinals are not off to a good start either, right? That pitching staff looks really, really
yeah.
vulnerable.
Jordan Hicks is
Um,
getting lit up right now too.
yeah, that's not good. And then a bunch of teams that were expected to play poorly are playing poorly, kind of as expected. But we mentioned the Blue Jays, Orioles lost a couple of games. Marlins could have been a fringe team, right? But they have already started off 1-4. They don't look good. Mariners are off to a bad start as well, and then Houston is 2-2 early on, so that's a little bit troublesome for the
I was gonna
Astros.
say the Astros. I mean, as far as good as we feel like they are, and they'll be good, they'll be fine. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're as far and away dominant as people think they are. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
pitching staff's got some holes in it. I mean, they lost Justin Verlander, and I know what whatever you might think about Justin Verlander going forward to this year, but they lost 170 innings of 1.7 ERA ball.
Right.
I mean, so, and I mean, there's reasons to be concerned about some of their other pitchers. Like we talked about
Right.
Garcia earlier. I mean, Hunter Brown's a rookie,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know how he's going to do. I mean, he's also a guy that's not necessarily the best command in the minor leagues before he's come up. So,
He
you
gave up
know,
4 runs today.
yeah, I mean, and then you've
They're
got
already
like
down 4-0 to the
I was gonna say,
Tigers.
and Urquidy's not really that good. And I mean, Christian
Yeah.
Javier was great last year, but there are questions about him and his ability to sustain being a really good pitcher too. I mean, he's really a two pitch guy, so um, like there's question marks with that team. And Framber Valdez is another guy who the pitch clock thing might really bother a little bit. And then you look at their
Mm-hmm.
lineup, and I mean, there's some guys in that lineup. You're like, yeah, I don't know about. I mean, they're starting, I mean, they're missing a couple guys.
Yeah.
Altuve, Brantley are out, but like they're starting Helsley or David
Hensley,
Hensley every day right now. They're starting
Dubon.
Mauricio Dubon. They're starting at catcher Martin Maldonado starting. Like there's some holes in the lineup too. I know they're really good, and you've got Jordan, you got Tucker, you got Bregman, you've got, but there's Abreu. You got some holes in that team though. I mean, it's not a
Mm-hmm.
juggernaut. So
It certainly has the potential to be, but
yeah,
they are off to a slow start. They're without their best player,
yep,
or maybe one of their best players, right? They're their
yep,
leader,
yeah.
basically. So definitely worried about the Astros and then a number of these other teams. So with that, we'll transition to Player of the Week, and we'll finish this thing off strong. Matt, who you got Player of the Week?
So one of the guys we did not mention for his performances, but we probably should have, is I guess because we're going to mention him now, but it's Adam Duvall. He signed a deal with the Red Sox in the offseason, coming off 2022 where he really struggled at the plate and then he got injured. The Red Sox signed him. There's a lot of question marks about why did they sign him to play center field for them, but he started off on his first weekend and looked really, really, really good. He had a great game on Saturday where he walked off. He had a walk-off home run against the Orioles I think it was a 10-9 final in that game after the left fielder Austin Hayes just dropped a pop up that we hit him right in the glove. But Duvall on the next pitch hit a home run. He had two homers in that game and a double. So that was really cool to see. Um, and a good start to his time in Boston. On the weekend, he hit 571 with 600 on base and a 1.357 slugging percentage. And hit the two homers. Had a great weekend. Today, apparently, looks like today he's 2 for 3 with a walk. So two walks. He's 2 for 2 with two walks today. So
Duvall is, yeah.
yeah, so he's having a great game again today, which is it's nice to see. It's fun to see Duvall. I really like Duvall. I'm kind of glad he wasn't re-signed by the Braves to a big contract or something, but I really like him as a player, and I think he's a good guy, and it's fun to see him succeeding so far in Boston. I hope he has a good year.
I pounced on him in Dynasty Fantasy Baseball, and I feel pretty
It's
good about it. He
rewarding
was
you
on
so
the
far.
Yeah, I got him. Well, I got him after a bunch of the big performances, but I think he's in the lineup today, so still playing strong, and I'm gonna ride that wave as long as it'll take me. But fantasy baseball's certainly fun. But speaking of that, I also have Dansby Swanson, who was my player of the week, or at least of this first weekend. Uh, and I gotta pull up his stat line because it changed after I wrote down his original stat line. Because today he
He had
went
a
three
couple
for
hits,
four
yeah.
again, which is his second 3-for-4 game this season already. And he, on opening day for the Cubs, as coming off of signing a big deal and being kind of that, the maybe the fourth shortstop that signed, and there's kind of questions about his hitting, questions about his fielding, and really for me, I was excited because it's a new player, but I hadn't seen him play, right? I haven't watched him play. Watching this guy play, man, it is so much fun. And I know it's a hot streak, right? This is very Babbitt driven. He doesn't have a home run
It,
yet, but 291 WRC plus, 583 average. He's got, he's been the only bright spot in the Cubs lineup thus far. And it is really, really helpful to have that going forward. I we needed this in the lineup. We needed this kind of excitement. Hopefully he's able to kind of continue this, not this level obviously, but a strong level with a lot of contact and not a lot of whiffs. I mean, he hasn't struck out yet this season. His approach appears to be really
he,
aggressive, and that can help him.
I think he
So
struck out
I'm
today, didn't
excited.
he?
Oh, he might
Struck
have.
out one. I think he struck out once, and
Yeah,
his not hit was a strikeout, I think. But either
yeah.
way, I looked at because I was looking at the box score earlier. But yeah, he enjoy Dansby Swanson while he's hot. He does this. He'll
Yeah,
do this for like he might even do this for like 3 weeks, and then he'll go like 3 weeks without a hit. He'll strike out 60% of the time. But at the end of the day, it's the amount of time. It's what he does on the in between times that'll end up whether he's a really solid hitter like he was last year or average or below average hitter like he has been a couple times. But he's
yeah.
definitely been a fun guy to he's definitely a fun guy to watch when he's rolling, and it's good to see. It's I'm glad he's had a good start there.
Funny story though. Brent Xander Bogarts 309 WRC plus so far. Dansby Swanson 301 WRC plus so far.
Yeah,
Xander's hit 2 home runs. So both of those guys kind of playing to their contract early on, playing like a star. Really awesome to see. Because like we said, we really want signing big spending to be rewarded, and I think that's important. But just looking at, I mean, Dansby's really been the only bright spot on this Cubs team. Cody Bellinger homered today, thankfully, and Ian Happ's been a homered a couple of times. Nico Horner's gotten on base, and beyond that, it's been really rough. So, uh, you know, considering uh, the group he's playing with, I feel very happy about this bright spot. Would be remiss if I didn't mention Yohan Moncada's off to a good start. He's desperately needed it. Nolan
yeah,
Gorman's off to a very good start. We haven't mentioned his name yet today. Bryce Terang hit a grand slam today.
yeah. I was
Um,
watching that game.
yeah, that's good. Gleyber
Yeah,
Torres is off to a good start. He has needed it. Miguel Vargas has walked a bunch of times already,
yeah.
and he was the guy who did not walk or he did not swing the bat on purpose in spring training. He's still not swinging the bat. Someone forgot to tell him he's allowed to swing now, and he brought it to the regular season. He's got a 61% walk rate through 4 games, so that's fun.
Very interesting.
Ronald Acuna hit a couple of home runs. We got to mention him.
He's 3 for 3 tonight with a walk and a
Yeah,
homer. Yep.
he's here, and Joey Gallo has 3 home runs already
Yep.
so far. He's off to a good start in Minnesota.
It's
So
been interesting.
I just trying to make note of some guys here before we close out. So this first weekend was the first weekend that we got to see the pitch clock, the
Yep.
first weekend that we got to see the bigger bases and the lack of the shift. What are your thoughts on those three rules really? Because those are the three that are kind of the most that we saw this
Yeah,
this week.
Yeah, it was very intriguing. I think that there were some bumpy times with the pitch clock, but for the most part, I think it has helped keep the game. And everyone's talking about the length of game, and I don't really care how long the game is, but the pace of play is the big thing. And of course, a way to measure that is how long the game takes. You think about if you throw the same amount of pitches, the game's 2.5 hours. It means there was less time between pitches and stuff. But I think it's been a success so far. It seems like most people have really liked it. Um, I mean, like I said, there's been some bumpy moments. I think the biggest thing has not necessarily been like guys taking too long between pitches. It's kind of been the start of innings or where or maybe after a big hit or something like getting the ball back into the pitcher and then having them throw like get up there to throw immediately. Like I think I've seen at least 3 or 4 pitch clock violations where basically the guy took too long on his last warm up pitch and it was weird. Like it wasn't even a real like. I think who was it? AJ Minter might have gotten one on opening day, and there was one today that I saw. Might have been in the Mets game. I forgot who it was, but the Mets were playing the Brewers today, and somebody got one. But might have been Carrasco that got it, or Tommy Hunter or somebody. But either way, I thought it was definitely interesting, and I thought that was good. The shift rule, honestly, you can still shift. You're just not going to have a extra outfielder standing there in right field, and I think it's made a little bit of a difference, but not a huge difference. And stolen bases, I've really liked the balance of that so far. I was worried a little bit that it might make stealing bases too easy for some guys, where it was basically like if you get a little infield chopper, it's basically a double. But I think so far it's worked out pretty good. Like the stolen base percentage is up some, but it's not like 100%. And it's definitely put more value on having a really good throwing catcher because you have seen guys like Sean Murphy threw out two guys yesterday. I know Real Muto's thrown out a couple guys. I mean, of course, he's had a lot of opportunities with the amount of base runners the Phillies have been allowing, but um, that's been interesting to see. I know the stolen bases were way up over the first weekend, so we're going to continue to see that. I think it's definitely been a big deal. So it'll be very interesting to see how these play out. But so far, my first impressions are pretty good. What about you? What have you thought about it?
So Jeff Passan tweeted this morning the time of game difference from 2022 to 2023 over the first four games. It was 3 hours 9 minutes last year, 2 hours 38 minutes this year. Having watched a few games start to finish this weekend, I really prefer it. It clips along a lot faster. The action continues to happen. You're not really like able to. It's not like you're able to look away, but it's more of a the game is always occurring as opposed to well they're stopped. We wait 30 seconds. We're still waiting. They pick off. We wait 30 more seconds. Right? There's none of that anymore, and that's the stuff that always bothered me about baseball. And you think about an in-game experience, fans boo as soon as there's a pickoff, right? Who cares? So they're trying to pick him off. It makes sense, but what they are booing is the time the pitcher is taking with a
Yeah,
runner on base, right? That's the problem, and that was always the problem. I think one thing that I saw that's going to help, what's going to be helping pitcher health is this pitch clock. I mean, pitchers are not able to throw max effort all the time, right? We saw Hunter Green throw 105, but the belief is that the pitchers will be forced to throw, less than 100% all of the time. And without the pitch clock, right, they were taking 20, 25, 30 seconds to gather themselves and throw max effort every single time. I think this is a really good thing for hitting, especially because, I mean, batting lines are up, right? And that may be partially due to the shift and partially due to the clock. I think it's got a little of both. But batting line from 2022 is 230 batting average, 308 on base, 374 slugging for the league over the first four games. This year, the league is at 245 batting average, 323 on base, 392 slugging, four games, right? Obviously, not something we can draw conclusions from, but offense up a little bit. Stolen bases up from, I think, 24 to, 29 to 70, which is a good increase, right? That
yeah,
that means stolen bases are occurring. What's that? It's like once a game, maybe twice a game, almost like
yeah,
1.5 times a game, something like that. That's good, right? I want to see some steals. I was legit. I made my MVP picks based on stolen bases, right? I thought stolen bases are going to go nuts. Teams are going to get really aggressive with it, and we might still see that. But early on, it's been a nice balance. The
yeah,
shift, like you said, what I like seeing about the lack of the shift is no third baseman in right field. That's so
yeah,
beautiful to me, and I don't really mind if they bring the left fielder to right field because there's a lot less like risk. There's a lot more risk to that, right? If the batter does finally hit a opposite field fly ball, it's inside the park home run, right? Like that's a big risk. The third baseman out there, that was just giving up a single if he hits a ground ball to the left side. So I want my players playing their positions. I want them to be athletic. And what I've seen so far has been you can shift, you can still position your players accordingly, but it's okay that because that's still their position, right? The shortstop playing up the middle, he's still playing shortstop. He's not playing second base anymore, right? Once he crosses that line. So I like it, and you wouldn't even notice the bigger bases. I wouldn't have noticed them. I've noticed that it's a little bit easier to dodge collisions at first base, which is good
yeah.
for
That's been
health.
nice.
So ultimately, I think the rules have been a success so far. I do think there's some tweaks that can be made, right? I think, and what I've seen is that I think warnings are being issued to you know hitters for not being ready. I think that's happened a couple of times where the umpire simply warns him, calls their time, and they move on without getting a violation because I felt like it was always a little bit off to have some onus on the hitter, right? When you're trying to get the pitchers to speed up, it's not really the hitter's fault, but the hitters do need, to be ready. And I don't know that charging them a strike if they're not ready right at 8 seconds, like they were doing in spring training, is the solution. But it seemed like there was some warnings, and it seemed like there weren't a whole lot of those violations. And a strike
I,
is much more impactful than a ball. So I think it worked out nicely, and it had a nice balance early in the season.
yeah, I do think that there will be some adjustments eventually, and there might be times where they do increase the time for pitchers too. Like, I mean, because at a certain point, especially in the postseason or late in the season in big games, late in games, like you don't want the game to feel super rushed. Like,
Right.
so that that's the one thing I've kind of been worried about with the pitch clock. I think that in April, in the first 6 innings of a game, you know, I think it's fantastic to have this pitch clock and have the pitchers work really fast. But when you get to October, and you've got a tied game in the 8th inning and the bases are loaded, and it's like if the pitcher needs to step off and catch his breath a tiny bit, like I think that's okay. That moment, all that anticipation of the next pitch, like it does bring
Hmm.
excitement still. So
Right.
I do worry a little bit about that, but I think there will be adjustments. I think Major League Baseball is. It sounds like they're really open to feedback and adjustments on this from the players and the fans. So hopefully that's the case. This is supposed to be to grow the game and help the game move forward. So that's definitely something we need to see. So it'll be interesting to see what happens the rest of the year. But so far the rule changes have been they haven't made the game you know wildly different, but they've made some small improvements that I think have helped the quality product they've had so far. It's been nice to see.
Yeah, I think so too. And I wonder, hypothetically, right? Maybe one of the changes they can make, they've already got a 20-second clock on with runners on. I do wonder if postseason late game might just be a 20-second clock all the time.
Yeah, maybe.
Something to that effect where you allow those moments to breathe a little bit more. But once you're past 20 seconds, I do think it's just too long no matter what. Is kind of where I'm at, right? If you're spending more than 20 seconds between pitches, you're approaching the point of taking too long in the moment.
Yeah.
So, you I do think that there's something to be said for letting the late game breathe a little bit, letting the moment build, letting the crowd cheer, not rushing through that. But I didn't notice it. And we had some tense
Yeah.
games. The Cubs had some tense games early on. Did not notice that there was less intensity in those games.
Yeah.
So,
And one last little thing on that too. I think there's some times where especially like early in the season and in spring training, even where a player was getting a round of applause or something for it's their first at
mhm,
bat with a new team, or it's like a veteran that's coming back for their last year, or had you had that game where Sergio Romo came back to pitch one more time in the last game of spring training before he retires, and they were calling pitch clock violations. Like they need to have some like leeway on that. I think the umpires. I know they were trying to strictly enforce everything to get it established, but in the come going through the season, they need to leave a little bit of leeway for stuff like that. In kind of like the umpire needs to have some kind of discretion on, hey, like let's let this moment happen here before because there's got to be times where a player comes back to play where they haven't where they used to play or something like when they with the new schedule the Padres go play the Red Sox, Xander Bogaerts goes back, gets in the box, it's going to be like they're probably going to give him a standing ovation for his time
mhm.
there, and they're going to say pitch clock violation, and it's like, well, that's kind of stupid. Like, let the fans have their moment, let the player have his moment. So I do think that that's something they're going to need to kind of have some discretion with too. But
Right. And from what I saw, there was a good bit of discretion, and there was a
yeah,
good bit, it didn't feel any rushed. We weren't giving out unjust penalties. I don't
yeah,
think anybody complained about any of the pitch clock violations. Like only
yeah.
40 were called
I
in the
think there
whole
was, yeah, I
major
think there
leagues over
was
the first four
one that
games.
I think there was one they called on the Mets maybe because Pete Alonso
Oh, that's the
wasn't
one.
back.
Yep.
Yeah, that was one that was kind of weird, but because Pete Alonso didn't get back to first base, and they were like, "What do we do?" After a
Right.
foul ball or something, or so that was a weird one. But other than that, I didn't remember any that were really in this regular season so far. At least there was a few in spring
Hmm.
training that people were like, "Really?" But
Right.
in the regular season, I think there hadn't been any other issues. So
If you got 1 in 40 over 4 games, right, that's a 2% rate.
yeah,
If you got 2% weird rate on those, I think you're doing well. So I
yep,
think we're good. All right.
yep.
That's going to be it for us. I think we don't really have anything else. So, Matt, any closing thoughts before we go into this second or first full week of baseball?
Um, Not really. Just been exciting to watch. Been some good games so far, and definitely looking forward to the season. It's been fun, and I think we're going to see some good baseball here going forward. Hopefully the weather warms up a little bit too. This opening weekend's had some bad weather for a lot of the country. I know that it's in the Midwest. It's been really really cold, and there's been some. It's been really windy in some areas, and I think on the East Coast it was pretty cold too. So we'll see. Hopefully that the weather gets a little bit better and fans are able to enjoy their. A lot of teams haven't had their home openers yet, so hopefully everything goes smoothly with that. But yeah, good start. Let's keep it going.
Yep. Severe weather in the Midwest, too,
Yep.
not helping
Yeah,
anything. So,
and yeah, and also my thoughts are with everybody that got affected by those storms the other day. That was a
yep.
really bad outbreak, and um, it looks like there might be another one here in the next couple days. So um, you know, obviously we're thinking about those people too. But yeah,
Yep. That's it for us. Have a good night, everybody. Make sure to follow us at the Batflip Podcast on Twitter. I'm at dwest three underscores. Matt's at Matt Arcara. And this has been the Batflip Podcast. Everybody, have a good night.